Welcome to Subscription Prescription, the podcast where you get the information you need to scale your subscription program. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another dose of Subscription Prescription. I'm your host, Matthew Holman, and this is the podcast where we're helping you figure out everything related to D2C subscriptions. I'm really excited to be joined today by one of the leading minds in retention in the D2C space, Sonja Grasser. Sonja, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Matt, for having me. I'm super excited.
Me too. It's so fun. We actually have a few different connections. Chase Clymer introduced us, but we have a lot of really people in common. So it's always kind of funny to bring somebody together where we're working in the space, you're doing such great things. So I'm excited to interview for our audience. I would love for you to start out by telling us a little bit more about your experience, about retention theory, and the things that you're working on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Sonja. I've been in the retention space for over a decade. I'm originally from Austria, came to the US 15 years ago, and kind of by accident landed in retention and started to just love it. And for the past couple of years, I've specifically honed into subscription models and CPG in general. I've worked brand side for many, many years with brands like Mary Ruth Organics, Caged, Wellbel. And yeah, I went out on my own as a fractional resource for brands that do vitamin supplements, beauty a little over a year ago. And that's what I do right now.
Oh, that's fantastic. I also noticed you worked at Mizzen in Maine for a little while too, which I just want to give a quick shout out because they have the most comfortable pants I've ever had. I'm literally wearing them right now. Anyway, total big aside. And then we have a mutual friend too as well, in Hattie Gilpin from Wellbel as well. She's doing some really fun stuff in the analytics space, building out Go Ham. So she was excited for us to be able to chat today too. So you've gone fractional. I'm kind of curious, because some of the stuff that we're seeing in the retention space, I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts. What are some of the opportunities or maybe start with some of the problems you're seeing with doing really good retention work in a space that is normally seen as just being acquisition obsessed, right, in D2C?
100%. And you're bringing up a very great point with my fractional work. So back in the days when I was brand side, I was working in strategic roles as a director, senior director. But then typically when I came on to work with brands, they didn't have anyone drive strategy. But a lot of brands these days, they know acquisition lags behind, but they don't really know who exactly to bring on. In their mind, they're thinking more about an operator, or they're thinking, oh, retention, it's just CRM, it's just email and SMS, right? And there is this huge gap of understanding where when you have an operator, which you still need strategy. Right. So that was one of the things that led me to venture out as a fractional resource, because most of the brands I work with let's say in the range up to 25 million annual revenue, you don't really need a full house retention expert on site, but you need their brains, their mind for the strategy. Right. And just that epiphany alone revealed the biggest gap here for brands, really that understanding of what they need to bring on in the first place. Because a person that owns strategy, they will know where to look at. They will not just optimize your email, your SMS, or maybe you have an app. They will look into your subscription program and connect the dots. They will look into Shopify and how your revenue looks like, how much you spend on discounts, all the moving pieces, and bring it all together, which an operator typically is not able to do.
Right.
Or a junior operator.
It's so interesting you bring that up because we've had like Joe Siegel on, Al Salomon on, and they mentioned something very, very similar, which is this idea of, brand as you're growing, headcount can be really, really expensive, right? So you have to be very careful about that. And you often will hire directors to do strategy, but they get pulled into so much of the operational work because that is what needs to be done from a day-to-day basis, right? We have a huge sale coming up. All hands on deck, getting all this stuff. Hey, last minute, we're going to change this and this and this. So everybody's scrambling to fix all their emails. And then, hey, it's not like the dust settles for very long. There's another sale, there's another motion. But without the right strategy, you're kind of just like, is it is it the tail wagging the dog here, right? Like what's actually moving the needle for the business, and strategy, like as you mentioned, being able to connect those dots is what's happening. So I'm really curious to hear from you in your work on the fractional side. And I kind of felt like you were alluding to that, which is why I pulled that out. Is like, hey, I saw this as an opportunity. I wanted to become fractional so I could help this way. It makes a lot of sense. Where do you see some of the biggest opportunities when you first go into a brand that hasn't had a ton of strategy on the retention side and start seeing like, hey, this is how we're connected? Is it looking for the dots to connect first, or what are some dots that you're initially connecting for in common for a lot of subscription brands that you think people need to be paying more attention to?
Yeah, I love this question. So the first thing I do when I work with a new brand is understanding their customer segments and how they speak to each one of them. Because what I typically see is that they do have, let's say, a strategy, what they want to communicate about the product, about the brand, about application of the product, but they don't really have an understanding of who needs to hear what. So they're sending the same thing to everyone, whether they are just looking around and are prospects, or whether they bought once and never came back, or whether they repeated.
Right.
And that's where a lot of money is left on the table, because those segments inherently need to be treated very differently. But there is very often a lack of understanding and a lack of bandwidth to actually do that.
Right. Where's that balance for you of like, because that's the classic problem, right? Like I could segment this to death, but I'm going to end up with segments with 10 people in it, and it's not worth maybe, writing an email or an email flow for that 10 people or 100 people depending. So I'm curious, where do you see the line of opportunity? Is it something you see in the evaluation process, or is it just kind of like a certain size? You're like, hey, if we have a cohort of this size, we need to be differentiating how we speak to them.
Yeah, it's in the evaluation process. And I typically start out with just three segments. One is never purchased, purchased once, and then purchased more than once. And then
Okay.
later I layer on those time factors and so forth. But if your prospect segment, for example, is huge compared to the other segments, then you have maybe not an issue getting people on your marketing list, but you have an issue converting them.
Right.
And then for each individual segment, I start layering a time component, right? First 30 days are crucial when someone signs up for your list. People you haven't converted in the first 30 days, unless it's a product that needs deep research. But let's say for the regular protein, vitamins, skincare, you typically lose them.
Right.
So urgency is paramount here. And then
Okay.
for
So
people
yeah.
who, yeah, go
Keep
ahead.
going. No, I was going to say, keep
Yeah.
going. I was going to ask a
Yeah.
follow-up question to keep going.
So then for people who purchased once, it's really important to understand immediately when the next purchase should take place, or otherwise it's a sign of churn. And that is typically much,
Mhm.
much sooner than the typical win-back flows are set up. They're typically set up 60, 90 days, which is way too late, because in that particular space of vitamins, supplements, and skincare, people have already moved on to someone
Right.
else, or they reduced consumption, which is both concerning.
Okay. So yeah. So you're making a distinction between, say, somebody who's subscribed and canceled as a win-back campaign. Those are typically 60, 90 days. Somebody's done a one-time purchase, you have to try to push them for a repeat purchase very quickly, because otherwise they've moved on to another solution, another option. Is that right? Is that what
Yeah,
you're saying?
that
Okay.
is what I'm saying. And that implies also that you understand and know your typical time to second purchase. That's a
Sure.
metric very few brands actually track. But if you have that value, you know when to reach out again, which is typically before that window closes.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Okay. And then what about for the segment you mentioned that have purchased more than once? Are you thinking about that as a subscriber, like a subscription segment, or just people that are high usage in purchases?
Yeah, well, this will strongly depend on what the brand sells, right? If the brand has one core supplement and a couple of things to upsell, it's the opportunity to cross-sell into other categories. But then there's other, let's say Nutrafol, right? They have one main product. It's divided by age and then by the status of like where you are in life. There's very there's very few things they can really upsell someone purchased more often. Of course, we want them to repeat the same thing, but then if you
Right.
can, we want to cross-sell them.
Right. Right. Absolutely. So when you're thinking of like subscription experiences, and I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on like driving the one-time purchase to subscription options. So someone comes into the brand, they make a one-time purchase, they didn't subscribe right away. What are some of the things that you think about or are worrying about when you're trying to create a flow that will convert them from a one-time purchaser to a subscriber?
Yeah, I typically like to drive those initiatives with campaigns rather than flows, even though there are flows set
Okay.
up as well, because you can be just way more proactive. You can
Hmm.
actually take what you currently run as a promotion, or you can try for those people that simply don't want a subscription, those exist. You can try to at least upsell them into a bundle so they have more product on hand
Hmm.
and use it longer. And then maybe after they use the bundle, maybe then they are comfortable and confident enough to sign up for a subscription. So while flows are amazing, typically it's the typical post purchase. You purchased once, you didn't sign up for a subscription. Now let's give you all the benefits of a subscription. But people typically know the benefits of a subscription,
Sure.
right? They know
It's got
it's
to be something
convenient,
very special or big difference that they're not used to
right?
to feel
If they
compelling.
haven't decided at first purchase, then likely it's just not attractive enough. Often it's 10% off, free shipping, and you don't have to think about it anymore. But then what I like and what is a really good strategy for some of the brands I work with is to front load a larger discount over several months rather than giving them an upfront discount, which then can
Hmm.
lead to higher churn once the first month is over. So kind of spreading it out because it also serves the purpose of building that habit and getting them used to the product.
Okay, and
I
that
know
makes
there
sense.
was a,
So
yeah.
no, so instead of necessarily saying like, "Hey, we're going to give you 50% off your first subscription order," it's like, "Hey, we're going to give you $25 off your first 5 orders with us," or something like that to try to get them going. I think what's interesting is like the promising of future discounts is always really interesting because if somebody doesn't take it, you technically haven't lost anything. Like if they take it for one or two orders, you're not you're not losing that margin on orders they haven't because they cancel. But I'm also curious what you've seen where people potentially are more motivated by upfront bigger offers versus lifetimes. Because I've seen a mix. I've seen some brands where, say, just the simplest of example is, would you rather have 50% off now or would you rather have 25% off your next 2 orders? And I've seen it work differently from brand to brand. It's not like a universal thing that I've seen be effective one way or the other. I
Yeah,
mean,
this is the daily conversation we have with acquisition because acquisition wants the upfront conversion. Me on the retention side, I want to understand the quality of those leads and those
mhm.
customers. So while the 50% off right now might convert much better, when you then plug them into your cohort analysis, you might see that long term you don't win.
Right.
And this is what I preach to be like, hey, I understand, but we need to think long term and we need to understand what we get when we acquire that customer.
Right. Yeah, it could be useful as like, I think it's healthy to think of it as like part of the marketing mix to run those types of specials. But if that's your main leading offer, then yes, we've seen the bigger discounting you offer up front, the weaker the cohort will be after the fact. So that's always an interesting point and balance, right, between how you're acquiring. And do you see that a lot of brands make decisions based off of what their predicted lifetime value is with brands you work with, or is that something you typically have to educate them on when you come in?
So it's very unique by brand. S Some are not aware at all, or some don't have it in mind at all. And then later, when the conversation comes up, it makes sense to them. And then there are others that are really forward thinking and that are like, well, but what's the LTV of that customer? How
Hmm.
does the customer stick around? How do we make sure the customer becomes a long-term user versus just chasing those new customers over and over again? So it's a mixed bag.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, I'm curious from like a just a general like either flow or campaign standpoint, what are some of, in your opinion, like pillars of like subscription communication that you see It doesn't need to be an exhaustive list because, we're a little bit on the spot here with some of these questions, but I'm kind of curious, what are some of the things that you're ensuring that a brand is doing well when they're trying to get better at their subscriber retention?
Yeah, there's two different camps. Some brands, once they acquire a subscriber, they don't want to send anything to them anymore.
Right.
And then there's the other camp, and I'm in the other camp, where we keep communicating with them and we just gain an understanding of what is useful to them
Mm-hmm.
and what is not affecting their decision to stay on the subscription.
Right.
Those are the questions you need to ask yourself before you plug in that segment of subscribers into your email campaign. And what I see typically working with those brands, obviously in CPG, a lot is around ingredient education, product education, usage education. These are topics that are appreciated by a current subscriber
Right.
that is not in a new purchase decision phase, but
Right.
that just wants to keep going. It's actually very beneficial. And what I've
Right.
found work really well is, for example, weekly blog posts that go to others as well, but mainly to the subscriber base.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually keep hearing from you. They keep in mind that they should actually consume your product. Because what happens when you never ever reach out to them again? Their protein might be in the pantry and never be taken out again because they simply
Right.
forget about it. Or the vitamin might be in there, it's right there in the kitchen, but you don't really grab for it. So yeah,
Yeah,
education.
there are so few products out there where you buy it one time and you're going to keep using it for forever. That there's no competition, there's no life changes.
Right.
You lose the opportunity to upsell, or I should say cross sell into other products. I think I had a brand once where I bought their supplement and they launched a skincare brand. And I love the supplement so much that I bought the skincare, which I never buy.
Yeah.
I don't like buying skincare online because I like it in store. So it's funny the things that you can get people to do if they actually like trust you and pay attention to what you're talking about, right?
100%. Because in an ideal world, when you keep solving a problem, the customer should buy indefinitely, right? They
Mm-hmm.
should never stop. Because let's say it's a protein, or let's say it's a multivitamin, that are really items considered these days. They're part of your daily routine, like
Mm-hmm.
brushing your teeth, or for many people, they have become that. So then it's really the brand that drives that continuous purchase by how they interact with the customer, or whether they let their mind just go somewhere else. Obviously, there's different buyer personalities as well. There's the buyer, when they find someone they like, they will stick to it. They won't look left or right. And then there's
Mm-hmm.
the buyer that's like, oh, I really want a new flavor. Oh, what else is out there? So you can't really
Right.
do much about that. However, in today's like world of working with all those amazing tools that are out there, you can actually gather that information post purchase, and then you can be
Right.
prepared, right?
Right.
So post purchase, rather than asking, where did you find us? You could ask how you are intending to use this, or
I
do you
love those
like to test?
questions.
Yeah, do you like to test different flavors, or are you
Right.
aiming to use this to solve a temporary problem, or is this something long term? Like, you can ask all that.
Right. And it's such an interesting phenomenon, right? Where say you're selling you say like electrolytes, right? And so you could have 50 different flavors. You're going to have subscribers that literally take the same flavor day in, day out, month after month for years. And then you're going to have other people that want to swap, try different stuff all the time. Maybe they have 3 or 4 favorites. Every time you do a new flavor drop, they're buying it, right? Because they want to try out the different flavors. And you have to figure out how to segment people to give them those experiences. You don't have to tell the person who's never changing something that, there's a new flavor. If you can, but you don't have to, right? As opposed to the other people, you want to make sure you're enabling a good experience. I'm really curious, what else do you see? So that general idea of like understanding which camp you're in, right? Of like, are we going to be sending stuff to subscribers or not? From a campaign or from an educational usage explanation standpoint, are there other flows or other places that you also look to see or find improvements for subscription brands?
Yeah, really important is when they cancel, why they cancel. And
Mhm.
obviously we don't want it to get there, but it happens, right? So understanding how well your cancel flow is set up and the information you gather, what you do with it, because it also informs, it's like it's a circle. It
Right.
informs how you treat the new ones that come in or what you provide to them that someone else reported they were lacking. So those cancel flows are an amazing opportunity to set up then flows after the information was provided to basically mitigate whatever it
Mhm.
was. Some things you can't mitigate, but others you can. What else? I think transactional is really important for subscription. I see brands, not a lot, but they don't send their transactional emails because they
Right.
just want to, they just want to stay low.
They don't want to
But
rock the boat. Yep.
yeah, but you need to tell people that their renewal is coming up and that you're charging their card. That's just, I feel
It's a
it's
it's a
common
it's a missed
sense, right?
opportunity. Well, yeah, obviously, I think,
Yeah,
yeah, I agree. You have to be able to tell people that because that's like common
yeah,
courtesy and then becoming more and more law. But I also feel it's like, again, it's a missed opportunity to engage with somebody to reinforce value, upsell, cross
a
sell,
hundred
things like
percent.
that.
100%. And there is ways, especially with the new subscription platforms, where you can, with one click, initiate an action. So another
Mhm.
product is added to their next order, right? It's so easy these days to do that. So yeah, this is another area
Absolutely.
that's really
Have you heard of
important.
the tool Zamo, the Klaviyo
Yeah,
embed tool? Yeah, we
yes.
use them a lot. Of really really like their tool for some of those quick actions as well.
Yeah, it's
And
it's a
then
really fun tool.
yeah, and then yeah, you're right. All the platforms are developing like quick actions to varying different degrees, but that's also what's exciting is trying to enable more of those quick changes. Do you see much play happening with SMS for brands that you work with? Like that's where I think some of the more interesting innovation is happening as well, with where we're trying to change or lead the charge with subscription management for right
Yeah,
very easily on your phone.
actually not so much and not enough, I feel. I think this is still a field that can use some development
Hmm.
in that space where it becomes easier and easier to really handle it all. Well, you can handle it from your phone, right? You can use your email from your phone and log into your portal. So that's been all optimized for mobile, but
Right.
straight through SMS, I don't really see that just yet kicking in.
Yeah, no, it doesn't happen a lot, but I do think of like, especially if you're trying to push new flavors or people that are trying to control their frequency, right? For, you know, the products that have varying usage, right? Depending on who you are. Like for me, skincare in Utah, it's super dry. Like I go through my skincare faster than probably the average person. So being able to adjust my frequency via the phone would be really, really convenient as opposed to
That's
having to
true.
log into a portal to do that. But I think yeah, you're right. There's still a lot of people that are afraid of what SMS does to cancel rates and also the technology of it feeling just like, click one for this or something like that. Okay, as we kind of start to wrap up a little bit, I'm curious if there are anything else that you're thinking of from a strategy perspective, either retention or subscriptions or both, that you feel like brands should be thinking about or doing to see a better lift on their retention.
Yeah, so I think it's all about education. Like your example from before when you mentioned that I was at Miss Maine as well, which is a very different space, right? In fashion, it's all about aspiration. But in
Mm-hmm.
CPG, it's about results and it's about convenience and education. So while it's great to build a strong brand that people feel they can relate to, it is not what drives for someone to stay on. And keeping that in
Mm-hmm.
mind, not forgetting about the educational piece, the habit building piece, and then asking the right questions, doing those
I think
surveys, whether it's post purchase, doing email surveys. Every brand out there that sells CPG should do a survey each month at least,
mm-hmm.
because there is just things you need to know about your customers that you can't know otherwise if you don't
Right.
ask.
And if you measure it, you can track it, you can market to it. It's really easy now to segment people by those different responses from a campaign standpoint or a flow standpoint, or like you mentioned, cancellation win back. So
Mhm.
no, that is a great point. Getting information and education. Sonja, thank you so much for coming on the show. For everyone out there who's interested in connecting with Sonja, you can look her up on LinkedIn. Sonja Grasser will have her profile in the show notes, or you can go to retentiontheory.com, subscribe to her monthly newsletter, get some of these insights delivered straight to your inbox. Sonja, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Matt, for having me.
Absolutely. That's it for this week's dose. Stay tuned till next Tuesday for another episode of Subscription Prescription. That's it for today. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe so that you can get notified when new episodes come out each week on Tuesdays.